Have you ever wanted to know which cities in the US are actually losing population? If you said yes, keep watching, because that's what I do. I research places so you don't have to. And today, we find out which major cities in the US are actually losing population. When a city loses population during a census, it means there are some serious problems in that city. Crime, poverty, bad schools, unemployment, and insane housing costs all play a part in chasing people out. The only people who stay in bad cities like that are people that can't afford to move, or they have enough money to avoid all that negative BS and stay where they are. And they'll stay there until all that bad starts outweighing that fat paycheck they get. So let's take a look at the 10 cities in the US that are dying right in front of us. Number 10, Chicago, Illinois. Chicago's got a whole host of problems, and some of them really aren't as bad as you'd think. We all know Chicago's got this horrible crime, and the news portrays it like it's a war zone. Every inch of the place is under fire, people are murdered in the streets, and it looks like a Brazilian slum. The fact is, it's kind of not that way. Chicago's a really nice city that has some really, really bad neighborhoods. Not a lot of them, but a few. As an example, Chicago has 77 recognized communities or neighborhoods. If you break them down, some argue that it's closer to 200, but the official ones are about 77 neighborhoods. Of those 77 neighborhoods, less than 10 are considered really bad neighborhoods on the south side normally. There's a few on the west side, but mostly it's on the south side. The Loop isn't horrible, and neither are the neighborhoods to the north. Good way to know what side you're on is if you start seeing more Cubs hats than White Sox hats. Cubs hats are good neighborhoods, White Sox hats are bad neighborhoods. But crime and safety is one of the biggest concerns, and it's sort of unfounded. Their total crime rate is only 89% above the national average, which is not great. I'm not saying that's, a wonderful Disney World type of place. No, it's got some crime, but like I say in many videos, there are cities in this country that have crime rates that are 400 and 500% above the national average. So 89, where it's not perfect, it's not horrible. Their violent crime rate is only 50% above the national average. Now, here's where it gets a little sticky. They have the most murders, but compared to the next one on the list, they have close to 6 times the amount of people. So that's why we use rates to measure things like crime instead of just the total number. If you don't understand, let me put it to you this way. There's 2 rooms. One room has 5 people. The other room has 100 people. You know that someone's going to come in and spray 2 people in each room in the face with pepper spray. 2 random people. Which room would you rather be in? Chicago is like the room with more people. Weather is another reason a lot of people list why they want to leave Chicago. You've got really harsh winters and very humid, warm summers. Now, once you get past all that, the number one reason people want to leave Chicago is taxes and the cost of living. They have high property tax, a sin tax, and a high overall cost of living relative to the wages of Chicago, and this pushes a lot of residents to seek more affordable states. Now, Chicago is a big city with a lot of really wealthy neighborhoods and some really poor neighborhoods, but the average for the city right now, the average home value is $325,000. In June of 2020, the average home value was $268,000. That's not the biggest jump in the United States, but it's still a pretty good jump. People flooding out has kind of helped keep that down. If it was still a very popular city and people were still flooded in, it would be a lot higher. Since 2020, Chicago's lost 0.6% of their population, which really doesn't sound like a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about city population, that is a big deal. Like I said, if they're breaking even or losing anything, it's a big deal. Basically, in that time, they lost about 16,748 residents. That takes into account how many left and how many came in. Their net was a negative 16,748. Number 9, Los Angeles. Los Angeles is another one that everyone thinks is far worse than it actually is. I mean, it's not doing great, don't get me wrong. It's just not this hellhole that's about to fall into the Pacific Ocean. Like all major cities in the United States and really the world, Los Angeles has some neighborhoods that should probably be avoided like a burrito before sex. We've all heard the stories over the years. Compton is horrible, South Central, even Watts back in the day. Watts is not great right now, but back in the day it was known as the worst part of LA. But like Chicago, Chicago, that's just a handful of the neighborhoods. They've got some that are okay, and they've got some that are really nice. That's the first thing outsiders think when they think about Los Angeles, how it's just dangerous and da-da-da-da-da-da. That's really not a concern for people that are leaving. It's severe unaffordability. Housing prices and general cost of living have far outpaced wage growth, forcing both renters and would-be buyers out of the market. 74% of people that have left Los Angeles as a longtime residents picked affordability as the main reason they're leaving. Give an example on the real estate. The average home value in June of 2020 was $725,000. In June of 2026, it's $951,000. As the cost of housing and just overall cost of living has risen, jobs are being lost all over Los Angeles, especially in the entertainment industry. This is one of the biggest industries in the Los Angeles metro area. And I'm not just talking about the actual production units, the television and movie companies that actually make these things. We're talking about all the ones that supply them materials, feed them, do security for them, rental warehouses, things like that. That is all suffering right now. And job scarcity is becoming an issue with Hollywood. California and Los Angeles in general have pushed film and television professionals to relocate to states with aggressive tax incentives like Georgia and New Mexico in recent years. The Department of Labor and Statistics said that there was 142,000 direct jobs in Los Angeles in the entertainment industry. In 2025, they had 98,000. Now, if you watch the news, read the news, whatever you do, you know Los Angeles has a problem with homelessness. So the quality of life concern has become a major issue, and it's not just the homelessness, it's the traffic, the public safety, and YouTube creators who walk around the streets filming people just to get a rise out of them. Now, we can't let Los Angeles off the hook without talking about one of the biggest complaints. It kind of rolls into the whole cost of living, but high taxes and the ability to work remotely. California's high state income tax has driven some of its top earners out of the state. Famously, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Joe Rogan. That's just a few. A lot of others have left the state because of the state income tax. Obviously, the millionaires can do whatever they do from wherever they are, but remote work has let the little guy move out of state while still having his California job. Here's their numbers. Los Angeles lost 0.8% of their population. I know it's sounded much worse in the press recently, but it's 0.8%. With all the people still moving in and the people moving out, they lost 30,253 residents from 20 to 2025. Number 8, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia carries some of this nation's greatest history, and it's known for its history. I mean, people go there just to check out places where things happen to make this great country what it is. You could walk down the streets Benjamin Franklin once walked down. But that's not keeping everyone in Philly. A lot of people are leaving, and the number one reason is career opportunities. Lack of competitive, high-paying jobs within the city limits is the most frequent thing cited for reasons for relocation. This is extremely heavy in the young professional and college graduate area. They're all flooding out of Philly like they outlawed dating apps. Obviously, another reason is public safety concerns regarding, crime rates and overall safety. If you want any proof of that, it's just a small neighborhood, but look at Kensington. That is one of the scariest frickin' neighborhoods I have ever seen in the United States. I'm talking, it literally looks like one of those Los Angeles movie companies went to Philadelphia, found a neighborhood, and then set it up to film a post-apocalyptic America movie. I don't know what the deal is with the people in Kensington, but they take this drug that makes them bend over at the waist and fall asleep like they're getting ready to tie their shoes. Sometimes they're thinking about it for over an hour, it seems. The cost of living's getting up there too. It's not crazy like some of the other ones on this list, but the taxes are high, the cost of living is high, and we're talking property, utilities, and basically city wages are taxed. Along with limited housing availability, just kind of drives up all the prices. Now, it's interesting, Pew Charitable Trust, they did some research on this, and when people leave Philadelphia, they maintain fond feelings for the city. And a large majority of former residents still view Philadelphia as a great place to live, but simply find personal or professional incentives elsewhere. I'm just waiting for some young couple leaving Starbucks, walking through Kensington, and then stopping and putting their coffee on one of those bent-over drug addicts' backs and just have a chat for about a half hour while they just bend over like they're about to tie their shoes. Here's their numbers. From 2020 to 2025, Philadelphia's population dropped 1.8%. That is a big hit. That means, counting all the coming and all the going, their net loss was 29,519 people. Number 7, San Jose, California. If you're not really familiar with San Jose, It became uber popular some years back when San Francisco got too crowded for all the tech employees. And Oakland really wasn't an option because it was dangerous. So they just moved to the other end of the bay and started flooding into San Jose. Of course, San Jose saw all these tech workers coming in with big fat paychecks, and they started raising prices on houses, on lattes, massages at Madame Wong's, and anything else people actually enjoy. But when people list why they're leaving San Jose, they call it something specific: crippling housing costs. Sky-high rents and home prices make it difficult to establish roots or raise a family without some really insane paycheck coming in every month. Now, we've been talking about the last 5 years. So in June of 2020, the average home value was $1.01 million. In June of 2026, it is $1.4 million. If you go back 10 years ago to June of 2016, the average home value was just under $600,000. It was $589,000 was their average. Now, for all you people that act like Californians are ruining North Carolina or Alabama, moving there, raising prices. No, they're not raising the prices. The people that own the property, the developers, the companies, they raise the prices when they see people with more money coming in. Same thing is happening in San Jose. These people aren't coming from other parts of California. They're coming from other countries and other parts of the United States. And of course, another reason a lot of people are moving is, again, the remote work. The flexibility there is insane, especially for tech employees. So a lot of them are heading east into the Central Valley almost. Tracy, Livermore, and a handful of others are absorbing all the people leaving San Jose. So all those big money people are just pushing people out. It's almost like going to a restaurant. You're in the middle of your meal, they come over, grab your plates, and make you leave because the guy coming in needs a seat and he tips better. It's rude. Now, they're not immune from California's big plague either, which is the homelessness. San Jose, for all its richness and all its high prices, still have a buttload of homeless people wandering the streets. Mix all that in with their traffic concerns and your quality of life score takes a hit. That's why since 2020, the San Jose population has dropped by 2.3%. That's about 23,507 residents. Number 6, New York City. For a lot of people, New York City was part of that dream you had for your life. You know, when you're young, or if you're in another country, you want to make it to New York City. That's where it all happened. There's a few cities in this country that are like that. For some, it was Miami. For a lot, it was Los Angeles. For others, it was New York City. Not many teenagers lay in their bed at night in Brussels, dreaming of the day they can move to Meridian, Mississippi. They dream about New York City. And it shows. New York City is one of the most populated cities in the world. It's 22nd, but it's the most populated city in the United States. And what's really strange about that number, it's not one of the reasons people are living. The overpopulation of New York City is not driving people out in droves. I think the people that move there understand it and they just accept it as part of the thing. Their problem is the unaffordable housing. The cost of living is the biggest factor, and then of course there's rent and owning real estate. The median asking price for rent has surged in New York City to $3,585 for a one-bedroom apartment. This has led a lot of people to look at New Jersey or Pennsylvania. They want to stay near the city, but they can't afford to stay there, so they move a couple hours away. So if they have a remote job or a job they only have to be in the office once or twice a week, they head over to Pennsylvania a few hours away. Now, a lot of people rent in New York, but their home prices, they're pretty high, but it's not like they've jumped a terrible amount in the last 5 years. In June of 2020, the average home value was $719,000, which is already high. So they were well on their way to becoming a very, very expensive place. They were. And right now, in June of 2026, it's $817,000. So not much of a jump because it was already really high. And a lot of New Yorkers have been leaving for quite some time. It's just they get too many people to come in that it really wasn't that big of a deal. Till recently. This is one of the few times where cost of living sort of plays a bigger part than just the real estate by itself. The cost of living in New York City is insane. You got high taxes, and of course, everything in New York City is more expensive, just because it is. From the Pew Research, it says residents face a heavy tax burden, including high state and local income taxes, which prompt many to seek tax-friendlier states like Florida and Texas. They didn't mention it in the research, but North Carolina is playing a bigger part in that every single year. One thing that was really popping up in their research was parents leaving because childcare was crazy expensive in New York City. Here's their numbers. Since 2020, the population has actually dropped 2.5% in New York City. That's about 220,000 residents. Number 5, Portland, Oregon. Yes, I always feel like I'm talking about Portland, Oregon, mostly because I live on the outskirts of it, live in one of the suburbs. I always get these people leave stupid comments. Well, take what he says as a grain of salt. This is a guy who chooses to live in Portland, Oregon. It's like, why don't you come here and visit? Don't just go off of what they said on Fox News or some right-wing podcast you got on. Portland has its problems. Portland is expensive, still a beautiful place to live. These jackaloons seem to think that because I live in Portland, Oregon, the stats are going to change or something. Like, I can't read the stats because I live in Portland. These are usually mouth breathers that can suck start Ford F-150. But some of the biggest problems here in Portland is the heavy tax burdens. Residents and businesses face some of the highest combined marginal income tax rates in the nation, getting right up around 15%. I think it's like 14.7 right now. And they're talking about raising the taxes more. In the Portland metro area, we have an insane tax. Now, keep in mind, I don't live in Portland City proper. Matter of fact, if I were to move like 6 blocks away, I would be out of this tax. But if you're in the metro area, which they call Metro, it's a own department of government, Metro, they tax high earners to help house the homeless. It's not working. We've been paying it for years, and we still got a ton of homeless. Portland's biggest problem is they listen to every charity and organization with a bullhorn more than the actual residents that are paying taxes. I don't like to curse on this channel, but it's effing stupid. So our tax burden is one of the biggest things, and also the high cost of living. We are the 12th least affordable major city in the country. Now, the good news is the home prices have dropped pretty good over the last handful of years. The average home value in June of 2020 was $471,000. Right now, it's $540,000. So that's not terrible compared to some of the other places on this list. But in June of 2022, it peaked at $598,000. So that's some good news unless you're trying to sell your house that you bought in 2022. So the homeless problem, the cost of living, these are all problems in the Portland metro area, not just Portland. If you do want to move here, look at Tigard, look at Beaverton, maybe even Hillsborough. If you could afford it, go out to West Lynn. It's a little expensive, but West Lynn, in my opinion, is the best suburb in the Portland metro area. Since 2020, Portland's lost 2.7% of their population. That's about 17,357 people. Number 4, Memphis, Tennessee. So the number one reason people want to leave Memphis, Tennessee is because they don't want to get murdered. Plain and simple. I don't want to get murdered is what people say when they're someplace else filling out a change of address. It's like you're in the post office in Overland, Kansas, and they're all, oh, why'd you leave Memphis? You just look at them and go, because I don't want to be murdered. The violent crime rate in Memphis, Tennessee is 597% above the national average. Now, to be fair, like all cities, if you stay out of certain areas, that drops drastically. Stay on Beale Street, and the worst thing you got to worry about is maybe a pickpocket or something. Enjoy the music, enjoy the bars, enjoy yourself on Beale Street, then go directly to your hotel and no place else. But their list of problems goes beyond the crime and safety thing. Now, that's a big part of it, but you've got economic and job limitations. The city lacks a diverse mix of high-paying, white-collar jobs, and the local economy is heavily weighted towards logistics, warehousing, and freight. Those are nice jobs, but, when the economy takes a turn, those ones get hit hard, like right behind travel and entertainment. This is another thing if you ever decided you want to move to Memphis. You're gonna want your kids in private school. Don't send them to public school there. The divide in the quality of public schools and the fallout from historical school district changes have driven many families to either move to the suburbs or rely on private education in the Memphis metro area. Here's their numbers. Memphis lost 3% of their population since 2020. That's about 18,863 residents. That's their net loss. Number 3, New Orleans, Louisiana. Why would you want to live there unless you're a heavy drinker that likes to party? Because New Orleans, it doesn't have a lot to offer once you get past the tourists and the drinking and all that crap. One of the biggest problems there, though, is the insurance crisis. Following severe hurricanes, numerous property insurers went bankrupt, causing homeowner insurance and flood premiums to skyrocket. This surge in housing and insurance costs has made property ownership financially impossible for most of the long-term residents. The other problem is their cost of living. Now, their cost of living isn't terrible, but the wages in the New Orleans metro area are very low, so it might as well be a high cost of living because you can't afford it. Now, another reason people are living is the climate risks and sea levels. Ongoing environmental threats and rapid wetland erosion continue to drive population shifts around New Orleans. Recent studies even suggest that residents and public officials should begin planning for long-term population transition out of the city as sea levels rise. And I've said it before, I've said it a million times, climate change is real. Are we affecting it as much as some of the scientists say? That's what's up for debate. Have you ever heard of the Ice Age? Well, we've had several that we know of. The Ice Age leaves behind glaciers, massive ones, and as the globe gets warmer, they melt. They melt so much that seas rise. That's why we've found fossilized seashells in places like Kansas from one of the other times when the water rose so high that the ocean came to Kansas and Iowa. And the Rocky Mountains really just look like Hawaii. You know, it's the only thing sticking out of the water. On top of that, they've got big problems with infrastructure, and that's not just the roads. The roads do suck, but you also got schools in disrepair, public buildings that need work, and they need more hospitals. They got some good ones, they just need more. Anyway, here's the numbers. The population dropped 5.7% since 2020. They lost a population of 21,975 residents. Number 2, San Francisco, California. San Francisco has been losing people for a while now. Kind of talked about this earlier with San Jose. Same situation. San Francisco got crowded, San Francisco got too many homeless people, and they got insanely expensive because of the tech companies and the employees with them big fat checks. So when asked, most people, even though the homeless situation is a problem, the cost of living and housing is the biggest problem. They call it an extreme cost of living and housing unattainability. Even high-earning tech professionals struggle to transition from renting to owning in this city. The other thing driving them out is people don't want to raise their kids in San Francisco anymore. Many young professionals and working class families leave for surrounding San Francisco suburbs just to get out of the city. They don't want to raise their kids in that nonsense. Your kids get on the bus to go to school and it's like they're going through a human safari. Now, the quality of life is a major problem here, and a lot of that has to do with the people on the streets and the crime. Many residents cite frustration regarding property crimes, break-ins, and the visible impact of high income inequality, which means homeless people. Most of them are suffering from drug, alcohol, or mental illness, but you also have a lot of people living in their cars or doing the van life in San Francisco while they have a really nice tech job. They just can't afford to buy a house or rent an apartment in the city. They shower at Planet Fitness. That being said, IRS data indicates that a significant portion of departing residents actually stay within the wider Bay Area, or they stay in California, moving to less expensive counties. Now, they've also got out-of-state migration for some of these companies that have moved to Texas or Tennessee or North Carolina, and that takes a lot of the employees with them, and that helps lower the population of San Francisco. Now, currently, the average home value is about $1.4 million, just a little bit under. That's crazy expensive, but that's almost exactly what it was in June of 2020. It's almost like they hit the ceiling of what you could reasonably ask a person for to buy a house, on average, I should say, because we all know there's ultra-rich people that buy $20 million homes. Here's their numbers. The population dropped 6% since 2020. That's about 52,471 residents leaving San Francisco net. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving from one of these cities, there's a nice link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country, and they could probably help you find a nice, affordable city to move to. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, St. Louis, Missouri. Is anyone else shocked? St. Louis doesn't really have a terrible reputation. I mean, they don't hit the top of the search categories like New York City, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. But St. Louis has got some problems. Education and crime seem to be the 2 biggest problems. The reputation of St. Louis public schools and persistent concerns about public safety is driving a lot of people out, especially young professionals, and they relocate to neighboring municipalities in the St. Louis County or the St. Charles County. So they're not really leaving the whole metro area. A majority of them are just getting out of the city. They've got some pretty harsh areas. They have had some redevelopment and things are looking a little bit nicer in some places, but it's not keeping the young professionals. They're getting out of the city. Now, one of their biggest problems is the natural population decline. The region's demographics have shifted. Like much of the Rust Belt, St. Louis experienced more deaths than births, leading to a natural decrease that is difficult to reverse without aggressive immigration or significant migration from young people. Well, young people aren't staying there, moving on, and they're choosing to have their kids elsewhere when they start their family. Their violent crime rate and their overall crime, all their crime is pretty high. It's not the worst in the country, but it's up there. Their total crime rate is 234% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is 281%, and of course, property crime being 224% above the national average. Those are bad. I'm not saying they're not, but they're not like what we looked at Memphis, you know? Bad, just not catastrophic bad, but it's enough to drive a lot of people out of the city. Most everything else is semi-decent there. Their cost of living is reasonable. Their housing is reasonable, with the average home value being $188,000. That is dirt cheap for a major city. It's just people would rather live outside the city limits. Another part of that equation is the economic restructuring. The departure or downsizing of major corporation headquarters over the decades has reduced the availability of high-paying local jobs, causing many young professionals, again, to move to other major metros, not just out of the city limits. But the St. Louis decline isn't following the normal things that a lot of these other places have seen. You know, the high cost of living, the terrible crime, homeless everywhere, real estate prices that curl your toes. No, that's not their problem. It's just, nobody wants to stay there. That's why since 2020, they lost 7.7% of their population, about 23,205 residents. All right, that's today's video. If you enjoyed that one, you're gonna love this one. It's about 50 cities you need to visit before you die. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.